November 1942, North Africa. German boots crunched across sand, still dark with American blood. Operation Torch had pushed inland, leaving behind the wreckage of battle. Among the scattered equipment and abandoned foxholes, a Wehrmacht sergeant bent down and lifted something from the dirt. A submachine gun. He turned it over in his hands, squinting in the desert sun. Sheet metal body. Spot-welded seams, a wire stock that looked like it belonged on a bicycle. The whole thing felt light, cheap, like something a child might assemble in a garage. He called over his commanding officer. The officer examined the weapon, then laughed. A deep, genuine laugh that echoed across the dunes. "Amerikanisch Blechschrott," he said. American sheet metal trash. He tossed it back into the sand. They had no idea they were holding the weapon that would arm 680,000 American soldiers. The weapon that would help win the war. The weapon that Germany itself would desperately copy before the war ended. They had no idea it was designed by a 47-year-old man nobody had ever heard of. This is that man's story. December 7th, 1941. Springfield, Massachusetts. Everett Blackwood was not thinking about war. He was thinking about groceries. Sunday afternoon meant a trip to the market with Helen. 47 years old, married 23 years, 2 kids. Daniel was 18 now, tall and restless like his mother. Sarah was 15, quiet like her father. A normal American family doing normal American things on a normal Sunday afternoon, except the radio in the kitchen would not stop talking about Hawaii. Everett stood at the counter, butter knife in hand, listening. Helen had turned the volume up twice already. The announcer's voice kept breaking, kept repeating the same words. Pearl Harbor. Attacked. Hundreds dead. Maybe thousands. Daniel appeared in the doorway, still in his church clothes. "Dad." Everett looked at his son. 18 years old, the age Everett had been when he started his apprenticeship, the age when a boy becomes something else. "I am going to enlist." Helen's hand went to her mouth. Everett set down the knife. He wanted to say no, wanted to tell his son to wait, that someone else could fight this war, that smart boys stayed home and worked in factories and came home every night to their families. But he had been 18 once. He knew what happened when you told an 18-year-old boy he could not do what he believed was right. "When?" was all he said. "Tomorrow morning." Helen left the room. Everett heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the bedroom door close. He looked at Daniel. Really looked at him. Memorizing. The way a man does when he knows memory might be all he has left. "Okay," Everett said. Just that. Okay, 22 years Everett had worked at Springfield Armory. 22 years drawing blueprints for weapons other men designed, other men with college degrees from MIT and West Point, men whose names appeared in reports and newspapers. Everett had learned his trade the old way. Apprenticeship, long hours, watching, copying, teaching himself mathematics from books his wife bought second-hand, teaching himself engineering by taking apart every gun that crossed his desk. He was good. Everyone knew he was good. But good was not enough when you did not have the right papers. Senior draftsman, that was his title. Senior draftsman after 22 years, while men half his age with fancy degrees walked in and became chief engineers. He did not complain. Complaining did not put food on the table. But sometimes, late at night, working alone in the drafting room, he wondered what he might have built if someone had given him the chance. December 15th, 1941. The telegram arrived at his desk at 2:30 in the afternoon. Yellow paper. Official War Department seal. Urgent. All senior staff report conference room A. 1500 hours. Everett checked his watch. 30 minutes. He had never been summoned to Conference Room A. Conference Room A was for decision-makers, for men who mattered. He went anyway. 15 men sat around the long oak table, most of them Everett recognized, engineers, administrators, a few officers in uniform, and at the head of the table, someone he had not seen in 3 years, Colonel Aldrich Whitmore, 58 years old. 3 years of retirement had done nothing to soften his military bearing. Tall, still regulations straight, silver hair cut short. The kind of man who wore authority like a second skin. Whitmore had retired in 1938. Everett remembered the ceremony. 30 years of service. Inspector of Small Arms. The man who approved or rejected every weapon design that came through Springfield. The man who had approved the M1 Garand. The man whose signature meant production or scrap metal. Retired meant fishing and grandchildren and Sunday dinners. Retired meant done. But Whitmore was here, in uniform. The meeting started without preamble. "Gentlemen," Whitmore said. His voice had not changed, gravel and certainty. "America is at war. We will send 8 million men into combat over the next 18 months. Each man needs a weapon. We do not have enough weapons. Specifically, we do not have enough submachine guns." He nodded to an aide, who placed a weapon on the table, a Thompson M 1928. Beautiful, all blued steel and walnut. The gangster gun, the FBI gun, the gun that won the last war. "This costs $200 per unit," Whitmore continued. "We need 3 million of them. That is $600 million just for submachine guns. The War Department does not have $600 million for submachine guns. We need tanks. We need aircraft. We need ships." He paused. Let the mathematics sink in. "We need a new weapon. Something we can produce cheaply, something we can produce quickly, something that works." Another aide distributed folders. Everett opened his. Specifications, requirements, budget constraints, maximum cost per unit, $20. Everett read it again. $20. The Thompson cost $200. "You have 60 days to submit designs," Whitmore said. "We will select the best candidate for prototype development." The meeting ended. Men filed out, already calculating, already sketching in their minds. Everett stayed in his chair. Whitmore noticed, walked over. "Blackwood?" "Colonel." "Still drawing other people's ideas?" It was not said meanly, just fact. "Yes, sir." Whitmore studied him, the way a jeweler studies a stone, looking for the flaw or the fire. 22 years you have been here. I have seen your work, your modifications to the Garand feed system. That was you, yes?" Everett blinked. "The chief engineer. I know who signed the papers. I am asking who did the work." A moment. Then, "Yes, sir, that was me." Whitmore nodded, picked up his briefcase. 60 days, Blackwood. Let us see what you can do when your name is on the design." He walked out. Everett sat alone in the conference room, holding the folder. $20, 60 days. His hands were shaking. That night, he could not sleep. Helen was quiet. Had been quiet since Daniel enlisted, since their boy became a soldier. Everett lay in the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking about numbers, about metal, about the impossible equation the War Department had given him. A submachine gun for $20. The Thompson had 47 parts requiring precision machining, milled receiver, forged bolt, machined barrel shroud, each piece taking hours, each piece requiring skilled workers and specialized equipment. $20 would not buy the barrel. Unless you stopped thinking like an engineer and started thinking like a worker. What if you did not mill anything? What if you stamped it like a car fender, like a soup can, sheet metal, pressed, welded? What if you threw away everything beautiful and kept only what worked? He got up. went downstairs, found paper and pencil, started drawing. December 29th, 1941. Everett had not submitted anything for the 60-day design competition. He was working on something else, his own design, nights and weekends, the dining room table covered in sketches. Helen stopped asking when he would finish, stopped asking him to come to bed at a reasonable hour. Sarah brought him coffee without being asked. The design was radical, maybe insane. 47 parts reduced to 35. Only 2 parts requiring precision machining, the barrel and the bolt. Everything else stamped from sheet metal, spot welded, simple, crude. It looked terrible, like plumbing, like a pipe with a trigger. But on paper, it worked. He was missing something, though, the magazine. Designing a new magazine meant designing feeding lips, spring tension, follower mechanics, months of testing, months they did not have. He stared at the drawing. 2 in the morning, Helen asleep upstairs, the house creaking in winter cold. Then he remembered something. His desk at the armory. Bottom drawer, the captured German MP40 magazine he had been studying last year. Standard issue, 32 rounds, proven reliable. What if he just used that? The thought felt like theft, like cheating, American weapon using German magazine design. But war was not about pride. War was about Daniel coming home. He started redrawing, adapting the magazine well to accept the MP40 design. The pieces fit, not perfectly, but close enough. The clock struck 3. Everett kept drawing. January 12, 1942. The competition deadline was approaching. Everett had submitted nothing. The other engineers were talking, gossiping, showing each other designs, heavy, complex, expensive. Everett kept his work hidden. That afternoon, Whitmore found him at his drafting table. Blackwood, my office. Not a request. Whitmore's office was exactly what you would expect. Neat, minimal, an American flag in the corner. Photos of young men in uniform, some of them probably dead now. You have not submitted a design for the competition, Whitmore said. No, sir. Why not? Everett hesitated, then reached into his portfolio, pulled out the drawings. Whitmore spread them across his desk, studied them. His face revealed nothing. 35 parts. Yes, sir. Stamped sheet metal. Correct. No milling except barrel and bolt. That is right. Whitmore looked up. And the magazine is German. The magazine well accepts the MP40 pattern, yes, sir. We have captured thousands. We will capture more. Why waste time designing new when proven already exists? Silence, long enough to hurt. Then Whitmore smiled, just barely. How much? $18 per unit, if we produce at scale. Whitmore sat back. The competition deadline is in 3 days. You will miss it. I know. But the War Department just changed everything. New intelligence from the Pacific. We no longer have time for competitions and evaluations. We need a working weapon immediately. He paused. Let that sink in. Forget the 60-day competition. I am recommending your design for immediate development. You have 5 weeks to deliver a working prototype. 36 days to be exact. Everett felt his stomach drop. 5 weeks? 36 days, and I am giving you full resources, full authorization. This is your project now, Blackwood. Everett could not breathe. Colonel, do you understand what I am giving you? Not just resources, responsibility. If this fails, men die. American men. Your son might be one of them. The words hit like fists. I understand. Do you? Everett met his eyes, held them. My son is already enlisted, shipping out in March. If I fail, I know exactly what it costs. Whitmore nodded slowly, extended his hand. Then do not fail. The clock starts now. Everett shook it. The colonel's grip was iron. Everett walked home that night in the January cold, snow falling, the streets empty. A month and a week, that was all the time left. He thought about Daniel, somewhere in basic training, learning to march, learning to kill. He thought about the drawing on his dining room table, the ugly thing made of sheet metal and hope. He thought about all the men who would carry it, all the mothers waiting, all the fathers lying awake, wondering if their sons would come home. 22 years, no one knew his name. Now everything depended on it. He stopped on the corner, looked up at the falling snow, white, silent, peaceful. A month and a week to build something that worked. A month and a week to save his son. He turned toward home. Helen would still be awake, waiting. The way she always waited, he would tell her everything, show her the drawings, explain what came next. And then he would get to work, because the clock was already ticking. And somewhere across an ocean, his boy was learning to be a soldier. Everett Blackwood was going to make sure he had a weapon worthy of coming home with, even if nobody ever knew his name. Day 1. Everett arrived at the armory before sunrise. The workshop was cold, dark. He did not turn on all the lights, just the one over his bench. He spread his drawings across the metal surface, looked at them with fresh eyes, with the eyes of a man who now carried the weight of 8 million soldiers on his shoulders, 35 parts, stamped metal, spot welds. It looked wrong. It looked like something a man would build in his basement with spare parts and desperation. But it was all they had. He picked up his pencil and started refining. Day 10. Whitmore came by every morning, never said much. Just stood there, watching. A silent pressure. Everett had lost weight, Helen noticed, packed bigger lunches. He barely touched them. The design was evolving. 35 parts down to 32. Simpler, cruder. Every time he removed a part, it looked worse. Every time he removed a part, it got closer to working. The receiver was just a tube now. Stamped steel, welded seams, no milling, no machining. You could make it in a car factory, in a washing machine plant, anywhere with a metal press and a welder. The bolt was solid steel, simple, heavy. The only complex part was the barrel. Everything else was plumbing. "Looks like a drain pipe," Whitmore said one morning. Everett did not look up. "Yes, sir." "You sure it will work?" "No, sir." Whitmore grunted, almost sounded like approval. "Good. Man who is sure has not thought hard enough." He left. Everett kept drawing. Day 18. Time to build. Everett requisitioned materials, sheet metal, steel rod, springs. The machinists looked at his drawings like he had lost his mind. "You want me to stamp this?" One of them held up the receiver design. "Yes." "No milling?" "No milling." "This is garbage." Everett met his eyes. "This is $18. A Thompson is $200. You want to explain to a soldier why he does not have a weapon because we wanted it pretty?" The machinist stared, then nodded. "I will stamp your garbage." 3 days to fabricate the parts. Working around the clock, Everett did not go home, slept on a cot in the office. Helen called twice. He promised he would be home soon. He was lying. They both knew it. Day 21, they assembled the first prototype. It looked obscene. A metal tube with a trigger, a wire stock that belonged on a bicycle, a barrel that stuck out like an accusation. Whitmore picked it up, turned it over. His face was stone. "This is what we are betting on." Not a question, a statement, an indictment. "Yes, sir." "It looks like trash." "I know. How much?" $17.50 per unit. Whitmore set it down, stared at it. "We test it tomorrow." Day 22. The range was outdoors. January cold, wind cutting through coats. Everett carried the prototype himself, cradled it like a child, like something fragile that might break. Whitmore was there, 2 ordnance officers, a captain from Army procurement, men with clipboards, men whose job was to say, no. They set up the target, 50 yards. Standard qualification distance. Everett loaded the magazine. German MP40 pattern, 32 rounds. His hands shook, not from cold. He chambered a round, safety off, aimed, squeezed the trigger. The first shot fired, clean, loud. The second shot fired, the third shot jammed. Everett cleared it, tried again, 4th shot jammed, 5th shot fired, 6th shot. The receiver split. A crack running down the weld seam, metal screaming, the bolt locked halfway back, dead gun. Silence on the range, the kind of silence that crushes. One of the ordnance officers wrote something on his clipboard. The captain shook his head, started walking back to the building. Whitmore stood there, staring at the broken weapon. "How long to fix it?" he asked. Everett could not speak. His throat was closed, his eyes burning. "How long, Blackwood?" "I do not know." "Guess." 2 weeks, maybe 3. "We have 14 days left." The math was simple, brutal. Everett looked at the broken gun in his hands, at the split receiver, at the jammed bolt. 22 years of work, 22 years of being invisible, and when they finally gave him a chance, he failed. "I am sorry," he whispered. Whitmore took the weapon from him, examined the break. "The weld is weak, the metal is too thin here," he pointed, "and the bolt velocity is too high. It is hammering itself apart." Everett nodded. Knew all this, had known it might be a problem. "Knew. Can you fix it?" "I do not know." "Wrong answer. Can you fix it?" Everett looked at him, at this man who had believed in him, who had given him the chance nobody else would. "Yes." "How long?" 10 days. "You have 12, because on day 13 we test again, and if it fails, we are done." Whitmore handed back the broken weapon. "Do not sleep until you solve it." Days 23 through 28. Everett did not go home. Helen called the office. The secretary said he was working. Helen asked when he would be home. The secretary had no answer. Sarah wrote him a letter, left it at the armory gate. "Dad, please come home. Mum is crying." He found it on his desk, read it once, put it in his pocket, kept working. The problem was the weld, too much stress. The receiver was tearing itself apart under recoil. He tried thicker metal, too heavy, too expensive. He tried reinforcing the welds, took too long, required skilled welders. He tried changing the bolt weight, made the gun jam more. Day 26, he had not slept in 40 hours. His hands were shaking, his vision was blurring, he was staring at the drawings and they were not making sense anymore. He put his head down on the desk, just for a minute. Helen found him at 2 in the morning. She had driven to the armory, walked past the security gate, found the workshop. Her husband was unconscious on the metal desk. Face down, pencil still in his hand. She touched his shoulder. He did not move. "Everett." Nothing. She shook him harder. "Everett!" He jolted awake, looked around, confused, then saw her face. "Helen." "You are coming with me." "I cannot. I have to." "You collapsed. You are coming with me." "Helen, please." She grabbed his arm, pulled. He was too weak to resist. She drove him to the hospital. The doctor examined him. Dehydration, exhaustion, malnutrition, bed rest, 1 week minimum. Bed. "I cannot." 1 week or your heart stops. Helen took him home, put him to bed. He tried to get up. She pushed him back down. "Sleep. I have 9 days. Sleep, Everett, or I will tie you to this bed." He looked at her. really looked, saw the fear, the anger, the love. "Our son is going to war," he said quietly, "and I am making the gun that might save him. I cannot stop. Our son needs his father alive. He needs a weapon that works." They stared at each other. Marriage as battlefield. Finally, Helen sat on the edge of the bed. "Then I am coming with you, to the armory, every day. I will make sure you eat, make sure you rest, but I am not watching you kill yourself." Everett closed his eyes. Okay. He slept for 6 hours. First real sleep in a week. When he woke, his body ached. Every muscle, every joint. But his mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in weeks. Helen was still there, in the chair by the window, a book in her lap she was not reading. "How long?" he asked. 6 hours. He sat up slowly. The room stayed steady this time. "I need to tell you something," he said. She closed the book, waited. "While I was sleeping, I dreamed about the receiver, the weld problem, and I saw it, the solution. It does not need to be one piece, 2 pieces bolted together. The bolts take the stress. No welds at the failure points." Helen stared at him. "You dreamed the answer?" "Yes. And now you want to go back?" "Yes." She stood, picked up her coat. "Then I am driving and I am staying. To make sure you eat, to make sure you rest. Because if you collapse again, they will not let you finish. Do you understand?" He nodded. "Thank you. Do not thank me. Just do not die before you finish." They drove back to the armory together. Day 29. Whitmore found Everett in the workshop. Helen was there too, sitting in the corner, knitting, making sure her husband ate the sandwich she had brought. The new prototype was on the bench. Modified receiver, bolted construction, new spring tension, lighter bolt. It looked even worse than the first one. "Test today?" Whitmore asked. "Yes, sir." "You look better?" Helen made sure I slept. Whitmore nodded to her. "Mum, Colonel." They went to the range, same setup, same officers, same clipboards. The captain who had walked away last time did not come, sent an assistant instead. Everett loaded the magazine, 32 rounds, chambered, breathed, fired. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, 32. Empty magazine, no jams, no breaks. He reloaded. 64 rounds, 96. 128. The barrel was hot. The receiver was hot. The weapon was vibrating in his hands. But it was firing. 160. 200. His shoulder was bruising. His ears were ringing despite the plugs. 250. 300. He stopped. Let the weapon cool. Checked the receiver. No cracks. No stress. The bolts were holding. Whitmore walked over, took the weapon, examined it, handed it back. "Keep going. 400 rounds, 500. Everett was shaking, not from the recoil, from exhaustion, from relief. 500 rounds in 55 seconds of continuous fire. No failures. He set the weapon down, stepped back, fell to his knees, not from weakness, from gratitude. Whitmore pulled him up. "On your feet, Blackwood. We are not done." But he was smiling, just barely. The ordnance officers were writing furiously. The assistant was talking into a telephone, calling someone, something important. "What now?" Everett asked. "Now we show the generals." The next 7 days were paperwork, reports, logistics. Whitmore handled most of it. Everett focused on preparing the demonstration. 1 weapon, 1 chance. Aberdeen proving ground. The generals. Everything depended on what happened next. Day 36. Aberdeen proving ground, Maryland. The Army's primary weapons testing facility. Everett had never been here, had only heard stories. They arrived in a staff car. Whitmore in full dress uniform. Everett in his workshop clothes. He had not had time to change. The demonstration room was full. 2 generals, a colonel from ordnance, procurement officers, logistics officers, men whose decisions moved millions of dollars. The weapon sat on a table, ugly, utilitarian, wrong. General Matthias Crane picked it up, turned it over, his face twisted. "What the hell is this?" "M3 submachine gun," Whitmore said. "Prototype." "It looks like a grease gun." Some of the officers laughed. The name stuck. Right there, grease gun. "Specifications," Whitmore continued, unbothered. "Weight, 7.2 pounds, rate of fire, 450 rounds per minute. Effective range, 100 yards. Magazine capacity, 32 rounds. Cost per unit, $17.50. Silence. $17? The general repeated. "Correct." "The Thompson costs 200. "It does." General Crane looked at Everett for the first time. "You designed this?" "Yes, sir." "You have a degree from where?" "I do not have a degree, sir." More silence, uncomfortable now. "Who are you?" "Senior draftsman, Springfield Armory, 22 years. The general set down the weapon. "A draftsman designed this." Not a question, an accusation. "Yes, sir." "And you think it works?" "I know it works, sir. 500 rounds, continuous fire, 0 failures." "Show me." They went to the firing range. Everett set up the demonstration. Hands steady now. This was his moment. He loaded the magazine, fired 10 rounds, clean, 20, 30, 40, 50. The officers were watching, murmuring. The general's face was unreadable. 100 rounds, 200. The weapon was getting hot. Everett's shoulder was screaming, but the gun was working. 300, 400. The general raised his hand. "Enough!" Everett stopped, set down the weapon, stepped back. General Crane walked over, picked up the gun. It was almost too hot to touch. He inspected it. The receiver, the bolt, the barrel. "No failures?" "No, sir." "And you say this costs $17? "Yes, sir. At scale, we can produce them in automobile factories, washing machine plants, anywhere with stamping equipment." The general looked at his staff. "How many can we make?" An officer checked his notes. "With current factory capacity, 60,000 per month, rising to 100,000 by mid-year." "And timeline?" "Production starts in 90 days. General Crane set down the weapon, turned to Whitmore. "I want 650,000 units. Initial order." Everett's knees almost buckled. "Yes, sir," Whitmore said. The general started to walk away, then stopped, looked back at Everett. "What is your name?" "Blackwood, sir. Everett Blackwood." The general nodded. "Good work, Blackwood." He left. His staff followed. The room emptied. Everett stood there, alone with Whitmore and the weapon. "We did it," he said, barely a whisper. "You did it," Whitmore corrected. Everett laughed, almost crying. "How much do you think they will pay me for this? For saving them $600 million? Whitmore's face was sad. "You will get a bonus. Maybe $500, maybe less. The design belongs to the government. You were doing your job." $500? Yes. "My son is shipping out next week to carry this weapon, and I get $500. "Yes." Everett looked at the gun. His gun, the thing he had bled for. "It is enough," he said finally. "If it brings him home, it is enough." Whitmore put a hand on his shoulder, brief, awkward, the closest thing to affection the old soldier could manage. "Let us go home, Everett. Your wife is waiting." They walked out together, leaving the weapon behind, the ugly thing that would arm 680,000 men. The thing nobody would remember, the thing that might save Daniel Blackwood's life. March 1942. Daniel Blackwood shipped out on a grey morning, 26 days after his 18th birthday. Everett stood on the platform watching the train pull away. Helen was crying. Sarah was trying not to. Everett just stood there, numb. His son was carrying a rifle, M1 Garand. Standard issue for infantry, good weapon, reliable. But if Daniel ended up in close combat, if the fighting got ugly, he would need something else. He would need the M3. Everett's gun. The production lines were running now. Guide Lamp Division in Anderson, Indiana. General Motors converting factory space. Women in coveralls stamping receivers. Welding barrels, testing springs. 60,000 guns per month. Rising. Somewhere in that ocean of weapons, there would be one for Daniel. The train disappeared around the bend. Everett went back to work. November 1942. North Africa. The reports came through intelligence channels first, then official army channels, then newspapers, Operation Torch, Allied invasion of North Africa, American forces pushing inland from the beaches, fighting the Africa cause, fighting Rommel, heavy casualties, both sides. And among the wreckage, German soldiers were finding American weapons, including the M3. Everett read the intelligence report at his desk. Whitmore had brought it down personally. Classified, eyes only, German assessment of captured American submachine gun, designation unknown. Construction, stamped sheet metal, spot welded, crude fabrication methods. Quality, inferior to MP40, appears hastily manufactured. Assessment, Amerikanisch Blechschrott. American sheet metal trash. Design reflects industrial weakness and poor engineering standards. Not suitable for serious military application. Recommendation, catalogue and discard. Everett read it twice, then he started laughing. Not a happy laugh, a broken one, the kind that comes when you have nothing left but absurdity. Whitmore was watching him. Or was... You find this funny? They called it trash. Yes. Sheet metal trash. Yes. Everett set down the report. Good. Good. Let them think it is trash. Let them think we are weak. Let them underestimate us. He looked at Whitmore. How many have we produced? 240,000 units as of last week. And how many soldiers are carrying them? Approximately 180,000. 180,000 men who do not care what the Germans think. They care if it fires, and it does. Whitmore nodded slowly. The field reports are excellent. Reliability above 96%. Soldiers prefer it to the Thompson in jungle and desert conditions. Lighter, easier to maintain. But it is trash. Yes, German engineers say so. Must be true. They both smiled, grim, knowing. Somewhere in North Africa, Daniel Blackwood was fighting. Everett did not know where, did not know if his son had an M3 or a Garand or a prayer. He went home that night and told Helen about the German report. She did not laugh. What if they're right? She asked. What if it fails? What if Daniel... It works. The reports prove it works. Reports can lie. Helen, our son is out there with your weapon, and you are here, safe, reading papers. The words hit like bullets. I gave him the best weapon I could build. Did you? Or did you give him the cheapest? Silence, the kind that destroys marriages. Everett stood up, walked out, stood in the backyard in the November cold. She was right. Part of her was right. He had built a weapon for $18 because $18 was all they had. If he had more time, more money, more resources, could he have built something better? Maybe. Probably. But probably did not matter. Reality mattered. And the reality was 180,000 men had weapons who would not have had them otherwise. Daniel had a chance. That was all Everett could give him. That would have to be enough. December 1944. The war was turning. Everyone could feel it. Germany was retreating on all fronts. Italy had fallen. The Pacific was grinding forward island by island. Blood and time wearing down the enemy. 620,000 M3 submachine guns now in service. Production had peaked and started to decline. The factories were shifting to other weapons, other priorities. Victory was coming. Eventually. Daniel had written 3 times in 3 years. Short letters, censored. Everett read them until the paper wore thin. Doing fine. Cannot say where. Cannot say what. Miss you. Love you. Nothing about the fighting. Nothing about the fear. But between the lines, Everett could read everything. His son had seen things, done things, become something else. The boy who left on the train was gone. The man who would come back, if he came back, would be different. Everett was different too. 22 years invisible. Now his weapon was everywhere, in newsreels, in photographs, in the hands of men storming beaches and clearing buildings. But his name was nowhere. The newspapers called it the grease gun. Some articles mentioned Springfield Armory. A few mentioned the War Department Procurement Office. None mentioned Everett Blackwood. He did not mind, not really. He had never done this for recognition. He had done it because they asked, because his country needed it, because his son needed it. That was enough. It had to be enough. He spent Christmas alone that year, Helen visiting her sister, Sarah married now, living in Boston, the house empty except for Everett and his thoughts. He sat by the radio listening to news from Europe, the Battle of the Bulge, American forces surrounded, fighting in the snow, some of them carrying his weapon. He poured a glass of whiskey, raised it to the empty room. "Come home," he whispered. "All of you, just come home." The radio kept talking. The war kept grinding. Everett sat in the dark and waited. March 1945. The intelligence report arrived, marked urgent. Whitmore brought it to Everett's desk personally. Did not say anything, just set it down. Everett opened it. New German submachine gun identified. Designation MP3008. Deployed to Volkssturm units. Home Defense Forces. Specifications followed. Rate of fire, magazine capacity, weight. Then photographs. Everett stared. It was his gun. Not similar, not inspired by, identical. The same stamped receiver, the same vertical magazine, the same wire stock, even the same spot welds. Germany had copied the M3, part for part. The nation that invented the modern submachine gun. The nation that built the MP40. The nation that called his design sheet metal trash. They had copied it. Everett read the analysis. German war production had collapsed. They were desperate for cheap weapons. The MP3008 could be built in bicycle shops, in garages, anywhere with basic tools, just like the M3. The report estimated 40,000 units produced before war's end. Everett set down the paper, looked at Whitmore, and laughed. Real laughter this time, deep, genuine, the kind that comes from vindication. They copied us. They did. The trash. They copied the trash. Yes. Because it works. Because it works. Everett stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the factory yard, workers changing shifts. Women in coveralls, men too old or too young to fight, building weapons, winning the war from home. "Do you know what this means?" he asked quietly. "Tell me." "It means I was right, not lucky, not adequate, right." He turned around. 22 years, everyone treated me like I was not good enough, not smart enough, not educated enough. And when they finally gave me a chance, I built something so good, the Germans had to steal it. Whitmore nodded. "Yes, you did." "Will anyone know?" "Know what?" "That I designed it. That it was mine." Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. "No, probably not. The design is government property. Your name is not in the newspapers, not in the history books. When this war is over, they will remember the generals, the battles, the victories. They will not remember the draftsman who drew the weapon." Everett nodded. Expected this, still hurt. My son will know, he said finally. When he comes home, I will tell him, and he will know. Yes, he will. They stood together in silence. Outside, the factory kept running. May 1945. Germany surrendered. August 1945. Japan surrendered. The war was over. Daniel Blackwood came home in September. 21 years old, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. A limp he would carry the rest of his life. Everett met him at the station. Same platform, different man. They hugged. Daniel was thinner, harder. His eyes were older than his father's. "You made it," Everett said. "Barely." They drove home. Daniel did not talk about the war. Not then. Maybe not ever. But that night, after dinner, after Sarah and her husband left, Daniel came into the garage where Everett was working. He was carrying something. An M3. Battered, scratched, the barrel worn, the stock bent. "This is yours," Daniel said. Everett took it. The metal was warm, real, the weight of it, familiar and foreign. "Where did you get this?" "Carried it. Anzio, France. Belgium, Germany. It saved my life. 4 times I can count, maybe more, I do not remember." He pointed to a dent in the receiver. "That is where it stopped shrapnel, took the hit meant for my chest." Another mark. "That is where I used it as a hammer, broke through a door, got my squad out of a burning building." He ran his hand along the barrel. "I cleaned it every night, even when I was too tired to stand, because I knew if I needed it, it would work." He looked at his father. "They told me you designed this." "I did." "Why did you never say?" "You never asked." Daniel smiled, sad. "I am asking now." So Everett told him, all of it, the 36 days, the failures, the testing, the German reports, the copying. Daniel listened, did not interrupt. When Everett finished, Daniel picked up the M3 again. "This is the ugliest weapon I ever saw," he said. "I know. It looks like trash. I know. But it is the best weapon I ever carried, because it worked. Every time, no matter what. It worked." He set it down gently. "Thank you, Dad." Everett could not speak, could only nod. His son was home. The weapon had done its job. Nothing else mattered. 1959. Everett Blackwood retired from Springfield Armory at age 65. 40 years of service, pension, gold watch, small ceremony. Nobody mentioned the M3. It was old news now. The Army was moving to the M14. New wars, new weapons. The speech lasted 5 minutes, cake afterward. People he barely knew shaking his hand. He went home. Helen had made dinner. Pot roast, his favorite. They ate in comfortable silence. "What now?" she asked. "I do not know." He really did not. For 40 years his life had been the armory, the drawings, the weapons, the work. Now there was nothing but time. "We could travel," Helen suggested. "See the country. Visit Sarah and the grandchildren more." "Maybe. Or you could just rest. You have earned it," he nodded. But rest felt like surrender. They finished dinner, washed dishes together. The radio played in the background. News, weather, baseball scores, normal life. The kind men died for. Everett tried to appreciate it. 1966. Helen died in October. Cancer. It came fast. 3 months from diagnosis to the end. She made him promise not to cry at the funeral. He tried. failed. Sarah was there. Daniel was there. The grandchildren were there. But the house felt empty. At the service, the minister talked about Helen's kindness, her strength, her devotion to family. He did not mention that she had driven her husband to the hospital when he collapsed, that she had sat in a workshop for days to make sure he ate, that she had been terrified her son would die carrying a weapon her husband designed. He did not know those stories. Nobody did. After the funeral, Daniel pulled Everett aside. "Come live with us. In Boston, you should not be alone."
I am fine here. Dad, I am fine. Daniel knew better than to argue. Everett went home to the empty house. Helen's things still everywhere, her coat on the hook, her reading glasses on the table, her smell in the sheets. He sat in the kitchen and remembered 25 years of marriage to a woman who never asked him to be anything other than himself. 2 years later, the house still felt empty. He set 2 places at dinner sometimes before remembering.
Reached for her in bed before the morning cold reminded him she was gone. 1968. Everett Blackwood died on a Tuesday in April. 74 years old, heart attack, quick, painless. Sarah found him in the garden. He had been planting tomatoes. The shovel was still in his hand. The funeral was small. Daniel came. Sarah came. The grandchildren, a few neighbors, some men from the armory who remembered him. Whitmore was too old to travel. Sent flowers. A note. He built the weapon that won the war. Nobody will remember. I will. The local newspaper ran an obituary. 4 sentences. Everett Blackwood, 74, of Springfield, died Tuesday. He worked at Springfield Armory for 40 years as a draftsman. He is survived by 2 children and 4 grandchildren. Services at First Methodist Church. Nothing about the M3, nothing about 680,000 weapons, nothing about the 36 days that changed everything. Daniel read the obituary at the funeral, then set it aside. "My father was not famous," he said. "He never wanted to be. He just wanted to do good work, and he did. The weapon he designed saved my life, saved thousands of lives, maybe hundreds of thousands. We will never know the exact number." He paused, steady. He never asked for credit, never asked for recognition. He just asked if it worked, and it did. That was enough for him, and it should be enough for us. They buried Everett Blackwood on a hill overlooking Springfield. Simple headstone, grey granite. Everett Blackwood, 1894 to 1968, husband, father, worker. Nothing about the war, nothing about the weapon, just 3 words. Husband, father, worker, the things that mattered. The M3 submachine gun remained in U.S. military service until 1992, 47 years after the war ended. 680,000 units produced between 1942 and 1945. Cost per unit, $17.50. Total savings compared to the Thompson, $124 million. Lives saved, impossible to calculate. The designer received a $500 bonus in 1942. No patent, no royalties, no recognition. Today, if you visit the Springfield Armory Museum, you can see an M3 on display. The placard reads, M3 Grease Gun Submachine Gun, designed 1942, produced by Guide Lamp Division, no name, nothing about the 36 days that changed everything. But if you look closely at the weapon, if you study the simple stamped receiver and the crude welds and the wire stock, you can see the truth. This was not designed by a committee, not designed by generals or engineers with degrees. This was designed by a worker who understood what mattered. Not beauty, not prestige, not glory, just function, just reliability, just bringing men home. The Germans called it trash, then copied it when they were desperate, because trash that works is better than perfection that fails, because war is not won by the most beautiful weapons. It is won by the ones that fire when you need them. Everett Blackwood understood this. He built accordingly. and 680,000 men went to war with his creation. Nobody remembers his name, but the weapon remembers. Every M3 ever made carries his fingerprints. Every spot weld, every stamped seam, every crude angle. The signature of a worker who was given a month and a week to save the world. And did. The best weapons are not the most beautiful. They are the ones that bring soldiers home alive. Everett Blackwood knew this. And that knowledge, welded into sheet metal and desperation, helped win a war. Nobody will build him a monument. Nobody will name a building after him. Nobody will teach his story in schools. But somewhere in some forgotten archive there is a blueprint, signed in pencil. Dated January 1942, a simple drawing of a submachine gun that looks like plumbing. And in the corner, almost too faint to read, E. Blackwood, senior draftsman. That signature is his monument, the weapon is his legacy. And the men who came home, like Daniel Blackwood, like thousands of others, they are his immortality, even if they never knew his name.